We finally played Gotham Knights. That's right, after a couple of delays, we have played a big chunk of the brand new game from WB Montreal. Batman is dead. We know this. We're taking control of the Bat family. Obviously, there is some similarities and obviously some big differences with the Arkham games that we all know and love. So Tam and I are here to talk you through how it differs and what we got excited about, and what we liked and what we didn't about the big 2.5 hours that we played of the game. So Tam, overall, can you set up how, what we played, where we played it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so first things first, Warner Bros. Flew us out to the Montreal studio and we played a chunk of the game. We played a little bit of the open world. We did some training exercises, and then we kind of did co-op and one I guess the equivalent is a raid or a dungeon or something like that, a big co-op activity of sorts. And yeah, overall impressions are, I'm not 100% sure what to think about it. I feel like this is a tricky one because we played quite a limited selection of it, and the hard part of it is that in that limited selection, I don't think the game put its best foot forward, but it did enough to not outright for me to panic about it, if you know what I mean. I think like the thing that I came away thinking about most was the story and the characters, but we only got like glimpses of that and hints at that in between the actual gameplay aspect of it. And the gameplay aspect of it itself felt familiar but a bit awkward, which I guess is kind of the theme for a lot of this game. It's like searching for an identity, and it feels a bit uncomfortable in its own shoes a little bit. It feels familiar in that it's very much based on, to a degree, the fundamentals are the classic Arkham free flow combat style, but it's missing a lot of the things that made that feel good and click, like the rhythm-based stuff, the kind of instant takedowns that build up over combos, and instead it's got systems that are replacing that. And it's tricky because those systems are clearly well reasoned and thought out, but for me they just didn't feel like they clicked together or feel good in action. How did you feel about it?
I will say that, like, once I stopped trying to play it as Arkham, or as Arkham Asylum, City or Night, or even Origins, I was like, oh, I get what this is now. This is more of a all-out action, kind of more brawler, more ability-based cooldowns, building momentum, executing those big moves. So, there's one sequence where you're kind of breaking out of, I believe it's Blackgate. Yeah, it is Blackgate Prison. This is the part where you're playing, but like there's one big kind of brute enemy, and she's only being able to be taken down by one very specific move that you are taught. And so once I kind of understood and got to grips with that, it was fine. But it was like swapping from, I started the game playing as Batgirl, right, and then you played a little bit as Red Hood. Yeah, as Red Hood, and then I went back and I played as Nightwing. But in that time, Nightwing had leveled up, and I didn't get a chance. Like, that like RPG kind of thing where you unlock an ability, you get to grips with it, you use it. And so I was unlocking all these abilities in one go, and then I didn't necessarily really understand how I was meant to be using them.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that this game's gonna face, and a lot of the people who play it are gonna face, is trying to get over the idea that it's another one of those Arkham games, because I think that's the biggest pitfall. And the tricky part is it does feel like that at times. I think this is those games, but like reinterpreted through the lens of an RPG that's got like these almost like games as a service hooks, if you know what I mean. Like the way that a Destiny feels, and the way that those kind of like almost, I know sacrilege to make this comparison, but like the Avengers game feels, where it's not about elegantly moving from one character to another or one enemy to another as Batman, or even Batgirl or Nightwing, because you could do that in previous games, and like dispatching them efficiently, using your various gadgets in a kind of fluid in and out motion where you glide from one enemy to the next, hit, use a grappling hook to pull another one over, and like double jump over or flip over someone. Like, doesn't have that fluidity. This is more about pushing the momentum meter, which is the big thing, as high as it can, or like filling up that bar by doing basic attacks, heavy attacks, dodges, and like last minute dodges, so that you can then power up and enable yourself to use these special abilities, which are mapped to various buttons when you hold R1. We were playing on a PlayStation 5, and then kind of managing cooldowns and dispatching enemies in that fashion. So it's more of a case of, it does feel a bit like those games where it's like meter and power management more than anything else. But as you said, it's a different kind of feel. It's not necessarily a bad feel. It just is very, very, and there are moments where it is quite like triumphant. There's like Red Hood's like weird like gunshot that just like seems to home in on everyone and instantly destroy them. Seems ridiculous.
I was not expecting. So like kind of, you've got the four knights. You've got Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, and Robin. And I was like going into it, I was kind of going, Nightwing and Batgirl. When we were talking in the devs at the studio, they were like, yeah, each knight kind of is a facet of Batman, right? And so I fully anticipated playing those two characters like throughout, but I was shocked about how much I enjoyed Robin. Like he's the more stealth based character, and also but like Red Hood as well. I was so surprised, and I feel like that's going to be a thing that surprises people, is that like there are these four characters that all do feel markedly different in terms of their abilities. But it's like, how are you going to decide which one to play as?
They've done a lot of good work in making each character feel distinct, especially like ranging, like the traversal stuff is one part of it where everyone moves in a very different way. And that aspect of like Batman, embodied in each of these characters really does stand out. Like Barbara does seem to, she's like, she represents that kind of like, they describe it as the justice element. They're never gonna be beat down, and like in combat she's like quite hardy, and she feels like very, very nimble, whereas like Red Hood is very, very like ranged and can crowd control pretty well. I really enjoyed playing as Robin because he had that like tech side of Batman where you could use microbots, and he could like put out decoys of himself to create aggro kind of like draws and that kind of stuff. So work that's been done that makes the characters feel distinct, even if it doesn't have that fluidity that you might expect. I think the tricky part of it really came down to one, unlearning the rhythm-based mechanic.
I definitely felt like there was an element of unlearning, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it's like it took me a minute to not try and fall into, old Arkham routines.
The combat is something that I'm not 100% sure on yet, and I can't say I'm excited about. But everything else, although I can't say is going to be great or definitely say it's going to be good, I'm way more interested and way more excited to learn more about.
The little hints of the stuff that we saw were like, so not only the way that they were kind of talking amongst each other, the banter was, I really enjoyed it. There's like, definitely kind of angsty moments between the four, but also just, I'm a sucker for emails, like in-game emails and messages and stuff, and so we uncovered, you get emails obviously sent to the Bat computer, and there's a bit where Jason Todd's like, I don't want to be that guy, but I bought a pizza and it's gone, so who ate my pizza? But like those moments of levity. I like the way the kind of investigation flowed at the beginning with Batgirl, because you as the player are in the same boat. You don't exactly know what happened to Bruce, what he was investigating before he died, and so that's kind of at the start of the game. And so the investigation mechanics are pretty cool. Like you look at things in that they're very detailed internal environments now, and so the way that you're matching things up, I was like matching up, trying to unlock something with a keypad and to see if there's anything in the environment, and I thought that was genuinely really cool. There were moments where it felt like classic Arkham, like it leads you through like a combat encounter, but then you can go into essentially a predator room and flex those muscles. And so it's hitting the right notes for me. I'm still, jury is out for me on the combat, but like I said, the huge caveat is that we had a very strange introduction to it.
Yeah, and like you said, the stuff that they're doing with the characters has me most intrigued. Like everyone is like figuring out who they are in a world post Bruce. They're all kind of trying to figure out what they mean to the city and what they can do for it. The city is looking for a new savior, and perhaps most interestingly, like all these villains now, they need a new a new kind of a nemesis to a degree, because he served like seeing Harley learn that Batman is dead is like really fascinating, and they all of these knights have their own kind of way of doing things, so that happens a lot where it clashes, where early on, Jason Red Hood was just like, I'm not sitting around waiting for you nerds to like decrypt hard drives and stuff like that, I'm going out now. But like then Nightwing steps in and is like, listen, let's not make the mistakes that got Bruce killed, and they're trying to figure out what his final case was and how he ended up in this situation. And the ultimate goal is you're working your way to knightdom, which based on the discussion is like we had with the developer, is like one of these characters will come out and emerge and take the throne and be like, I am the leader now, I am the new protector of the city. And it's going to be interesting to see how the others kind of vibe for that, or even if they like are like, yeah, maybe Dick is the right person for this. But there's definitely a lot of, and the other thing is they also hang out as not their vigilante identities. They're just like in the belfry hanging out. Occasionally we'll like chat, and there's like some good incidental dialogue. Alfred is there to try and keep them together and help them figure disputes out, and the character stuff and the written stuff is perhaps what I'm most excited about. And it does kind of make sense because I don't know, I thought the most interesting part of Arkham Origins was the story stuff and the investigation stuff, and they kind of leaned on the well-worn territory for the combat and a lot of the gameplay stuff. But I found that story to be really engaging, and so it shouldn't be a surprise that that's what I'm looking forward to in this game the most. But it is, and pretty much everything else feels like it's going to be good. Perhaps not like exemplary or like reinventing the wheel. I like the way the game looks, especially on a ground level. At perhaps like rooftop level, it's maybe not as exciting to look at, but you get into the ground and like the neon noir, as they describe it, is really, really cool to look at. And they have a vibe, and they're definitely going for it. So yeah, I'm like tentatively excited for it. But I've come to terms with the fact that perhaps this won't be like a mind-blowing kind of Batman experience that I want.
I found myself in a world that I know that I love, with characters that I love that are getting way more screen time, and I'm like that mystery. It's already got me interested. I hope it keeps on that trajectory. Like that is going to be enough to pull me in and keep me invested in the whole thing. I want to get to the bottom of it, and I'm like, I can't wait to see what villains they are. They're being like which is not usually the case. I remember Arkham Knight, they basically spilled everything to do with that game in the preamble, but I think they are keeping cards close to the chest in terms of which villains we're going to be encountering. We obviously know about Harley, we know about Penguin, and I'm, the Rogues Gallery has got some incredible folks to pull from, and so I'm really intrigued to see, because I think one of the things, very quickly, because we've been talking for a while, but like the way that Harley reacts to the Knight at the end of their fight is, like you mentioned, the Knights are figuring out what happens when Batman's gone, but also so are the villains, and they kind of have this, they all had this pre-existing relationship with Bruce, and now they have to figure out what their relationship is to Nightwing and Red Hood, and so, I mean, I can't wait for that.
I do want to, I did appreciate that it seems like, at least based on what we've seen so far, they're not kind of phoning it in with these characters. Like we won't say what this version of Harley is, but she's one that I've not seen in games for a while. She's got a history that you can probably figure out if you know the modern version of Harley, what she's been up to. But like, there's moments where like she's kind of helping them in a way, because she's teaching them how to be a better Batman, or like be more like Batman. It's very strange, this dynamic. Like when we had a truncated version of the Harley mission, but there were like nuances to the way that that character was written and like was acted that were quite exciting. And if I extrapolate that out onto the other villains that might be in the game, I'm hoping that they take that same approach, where it's like not the same version of Freeze that we're used to, not the same version of whoever else may be in the game, but they have like really recontextualized and thought about it in the world that now exists, where Batman and Bruce Wayne don't.
Gotham Knights is coming out October 21st. We'll obviously have a bunch more stuff here on GameSpot. If you're around right now, we've got some gameplay from our trip. If you want to go take a look at that. You can find Tam and I on Twitter. I'm at Loose James Games.
I'm at Timor H.
And follow GameSpot for more on Gotham Knights.